Perhaps the most important and influential American dream pop band of all time, Galaxie 500 was short-lived yet powerful with their discography. Made up of three Boston College students, Dean Wareham, Naomi Yang, and Damon Krukowski, their musical output from 1988 to 1990 was packed with genre-defining and melancholic dream pop tunes, and even ushered in a style of music known as slowcore. Music that is categorized by its downtempo nature and often depressive overtones and lyrics. In this video, I'll be covering the band's two most important albums, 1988's Today, the band's debut album, and its follow-up, 1989's On Fire, both of which are considered classics of the indie music subculture and, in some people's opinions, two of the greatest albums ever recorded. Let's take a look at them. Ooh, baby! As some people who watch my channel might be aware, in the last 3 months I've consumed somewhere between 70 and 80 fresh albums, meaning that I've listened to 70 plus albums that I'd never heard before in this time span. I still don't know why I decided to do this, but it turned out to be a bit of a mistake because now I'm suffering periodical burnout that lasts upwards of 3 weeks. Not fun. However, one of the positives that came out of this binge is that I discovered a plethora of new music that I found myself drawn into. Lo-fi indie, experimental rock, ambient, alternative rock, and dream pop to name a few. All of those are pretty cool, but dream pop is our central idea today as we delve into the legendary Galaxie 500. My experience with Galaxie 500 informally dates back about 2 years. To probably no one's surprise, my discovery of their band name was through Liz Phair's Stratford-on-Guy, where she decides to name drop them in the second verse for, I don't know, some reason. I really don't know.
And I was pretending that I was in a Galaxie 500 video.
A name like Galaxie 500 spoke to me in an unconscious way. It made them sound like a psychedelic space rock band a la Spiritualized with the word Galaxie in their name. I would later come to find out this is actually the name of a Ford model car, much to my confusion. But throughout these 2 years, I never listened to them, only keeping their name in the back of my head and studying a few of their albums from a distance. My second experience came from Nutrimilk Hotel's Naomi, which I mentioned in my On Avery Island video, is written about the band's bassist Naomi Yang, someone Jeff had an infatuation with throughout the 1990s. Fast forward about 6 months, and I finally decided to check out the band through their second album, On Fire. Within 5 days of this, I'd heard Today. I don't want to sell anything short, so I think it's time we cover the music itself, starting with On Fire. On Fire was released in 1989 on the Rough Trade record label, and is undoubtedly the peak of Galaxie 500's musical abilities. Undoubtedly. Dean Wareham, the band's frontman, chief songwriter, and vocalist, honed his signature vocal style here in the best possible fashion. He drones his voice over these reverberated, slow, and dreamy songs in a way that will make you think he starts his day with a diet of antidepressants and a cold shower. The lyrics he writes and sings are just drenched in melancholia, alienation, and loneliness, exacerbated by the underlying emotional tension in his voice. In a way, I feel like Dean's generally off-key vocal performances are what add a sense of uniqueness and likability to Galaxie 500, and especially On Fire. When Will You Come Home tells the story of an isolated and mentally broken person who diligently watches the phone, waiting for an unknown person to call, and spends his lonely days, wasteful days, watching reruns of Kojak. Songs like these, albeit instrumentally simple and repetitive, paint the band as an American Joy Division, weaving depressing and emotionally gaping lyrics with guitar chords and solos that speak 1,000 words. Album opener Blue Thunder is slow, double-sided, and one of the band's definitive tracks. The guitar is warm and textured, enveloping the drums and bass in an electric, watery blanket. Dean showcases his high-pitched vocal register here, never giving in to any vocal cracks, and it always comes down smoothly. You can hear this best in the track's outro, consisting of a repeated line, "I'll drive so far away," which plays into the song's motif of a fast car that the protagonist is proud of, his Blue Thunder, drawn out by one of Dean's melancholic yet bright guitar solos, adding to the previously mentioned double-sided tag I gave the song. Double-sided as in its emotional reach, that is. Many of the songs on the album present themselves similarly to these two tracks, despite carrying their own merits, instrumentation, and fresh-sounding chords. Another Day is one of the few tracks from the band sung by Naomi, and it offers up a strange sense of positivity, presenting the idea of a bad or different day as a necessary part of life, allowing room for growth and happiness down the line. On an album defined by unhappiness and angst, Another Day is a warm hug that puts the listener back on their feet, ready to take on the challenges of life once again. Other songs of note include Decomposing Trees and Strange, the latter of which is one of Galaxie 500's most lyrically relatable songs. Said by Dean Wareham to be written about an experience with psychedelics, Strange follows a man down to the drugstore, where he grabs a few Twinkies and a Coke. He waits in line to pay for the item, and as he starts doing this, he starts wondering why the people around him look the way they do. Why they look pretty, nasty, and strange. The lyrics, albeit simple and sort of silly, are so grounded in an equally strange reality that so many people have likely experienced once or twice before, which makes it one of my favorite all-time tracks from the band. Another point that I want to mention about Galaxie 500, and especially on Fire, is their ability to do fantastic covers. Although one is also present on Today, all reissues of On Fire are closed out by 3 covers, and 1 original song, but shh. And I consider these tracks to be part of the main album. The 2 of note, Ceremony and Isn't It a Pity, may as well be 2 of the band's most well-liked songs. The former, a Joy Division song turned into an early New Order single, is rich and deep in its sound, just like Joy Division was. Dean's vocals imply an homage to the late Ian Curtis, while still maintaining his own unique and original style. Isn't It a Pity is a cover of the George Harrison song, and while I've never actually heard the original, this cover version is absolutely stunning. It's one of the best examples of the group's proto-slowcore sound, and if seen in the closing track like the original 1989 CD, closes the album out on a grandiose note. Now, back to Ceremony. This might actually be my favorite Galaxie 500 song ever. Everything about it is epic. The double guitars, the blend of every instrument in the mix, Dean's vocals, the final verse especially, the battling outro that sounds like Dean is taking the guitars within an inch of their lives. In my opinion, it is the peak of Galaxie 500 sound, musicianship, and ability to do covers. Simply amazing. With On Fire taken care of, that brings us to Today, the band's equally influential debut. In quite the similar fashion to On Fire, Today is filled to the brim with lush dream pop tracks with instrumentals so darkly beautiful and down-tempo that you could probably slow dance to them. Opening track Flowers is melancholic and regretful, where Dean seemingly sings of a girlfriend that he feels he can't provide for affectionately and physically. He calls her a lunatic and feels like things have to change. That second line strikes a major chord across this album, as it radiates a sense of youthfulness that lives in a realm of carefreeness and anxiety for new horizons. This is perhaps best shown in the cover track Don't Let Our Youth Go to Waste, originally performed by Jonathan Richman and his band The Modern Lovers. The lyrics of the song, which has a feedback-laden and droning instrumental that is eventually overtaken by a hailing, low-tone guitar riff, speak of the fleeting years and memories of youth as a romantic relationship begins to form. The track that follows, Temperature Rising, is very similar to the aforementioned When Will You Come Home, in the sense that its protagonist is becoming mentally and physically unstable. He begins to shake, his fingers tingle, and his body temperature is rising, hence the song title. The lyrics are almost like a musical panic attack, as they describe swirling and forgetting things, wanting to calm down and doubting oneself. To me, this is what separates On Fire and Today, as the former is more focused on loneliness and alienation, the latter is more focused on depression, anxiety, and mental instability. And sure, while these concepts were all touched at one point or another in the songs from On Fire, they are obviously not the definitive central point. For me, every song on Today conceptualizes held in teenage angst and heartfelt emotional energy, but in a separate and unique way than On Fire does. One final track that I'd like to note is the album's original closing track, and second final track on all subsequent reissues, Tugboat. One of the band's most rhythmically and instrumentally simplistic songs, Tugboat is also their most heart-wrenching and powerful. Dean sings to a female companion in a strained and despondent voice that he doesn't want to go to her parties, vote for her presidents, or hang out with her friends. All he wants to do is be her tugboat captain, the person in her life that keeps him and her afloat. He views their future together as a place he'd like to be, a place he'd like to see, and a place where he'd be happy, implying his present situation is ruining him and his mental state, and potentially her as well, and that he'd give up everything to be happy with her for the rest of his life. The lyrics to this song, followed by an emotional guitar solo for the last minute of the song, are some of the saddest yet inspirational lyrics I've ever heard, only amplified by the rest of the depressing and lonely instrumental. The final 30 seconds of the song, where Dean returns to the points where he began the solo, and plays a final succession of beautiful notes that ring out with the finality of the rhythm guitar's chords, which also wash out in a delayed sequence that offers up possibly the most satisfying emotional end to an album and song I have ever endured. Nothing is stopped too short, too late, or too in the middle. This final section plays into itself so perfectly and sweetly, like a final kiss from a partner before you fall asleep, something the Galaxie 500 discography seems to desire, and it's not presented in better in any other spot than on Tugboat. Today and On Fire equally laid the groundwork for the alternative and independent music scenes of the 1990s, allowing room for bands like Codeine, Low, and Duster to grow and expand the landscape of lowcore and eventually sadcore. Although Galaxie 500 would make one final album, 1990s This Is Our Music, before an unexpected and still reviled split in 1991, nothing else they could have made would have touched the legacy, power, and influence that these two albums heralded. Who could have imagined that three misanthropic young adults in Boston could have made such an impact on musicians and music fans alike by just pouring what they felt into a lyric sheet and playing it through a watery and, at the time, unique setup? While I can't say that either of these albums, as much as I love them, are essentials, I do highly recommend that you check them out if anything that I said in this video piqued your interest, and especially if you haven't checked them out already. Most bands I listen to that made a split early on, or with a very small discography, often leave their work unfinished in my eyes. But with Galaxie 500, the lack of extra material makes them even greater, and helps their music shine even brighter in the pantheon of underground music. Some point down the line I may review This Is Our Music, but I felt it appropriate to combine both of these albums in one video, and I'm sure others would have felt the same. With that, I give Galaxie 500's On Fire a 9.8 out of 10, and Galaxie 500's Today a 9.5 out of 10. For being two of the most important albums in the development of alternative and underground rock music in the 1980s, paving the road for an entirely new genre and many bands inspired by their dreamy charm.